SEP Fanfic Readings presents Aurelian by BittyBlueEyes. Chapter 23. Bold Pretensions. Hermione closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and blew it out slowly. "You gonna knock, Mummy? We gonna knock?" Aurelian asked, looking up at his mother expectantly. Hermione opened her eyes and smiled down at the small boy holding her hand. "Yes." She looked up at the large black doors in front of her that belonged to the large gray stone Jacobean mansion that was Malfoy Manor, and rapped her knuckles smartly on the door. The door opened promptly, and they faced a small, smiling house elf in a pink pillowcase toga. "Good evening, Miss Hermione Granger, and—" "Perny!" Aurelian shouted joyfully as he threw his arms around the thin little house elf. "Ee!" Perny shrieked in surprise. "I miss you, Perny," Aurelian told her. His arms still wrapped firmly around the house elf's neck. It was rather odd-looking, as the two of them were almost the exact same height, but proportioned so differently. While Aurelian looked gleeful, the house elf looked terrified. "Aurelian!" Hermione called for his attention. She tapped him on the shoulder, trying to get him to release the elf. "Perny is thinking you are mistaken, young sir," Perny stuttered, unsure of what to do in such a situation. "Aurelian," Hermione said more firmly. "You have to let Perny go. She is trying to do her job." At this, Aurelian let go, but was still beaming at the house elf. Perny stared nervously at Aurelian a moment before speaking. "Master Draco is expecting you. Perny will lead Miss and young sir if they just follow." Perny seemed uncomfortable having her back to Aurelian and kept glancing curiously and apprehensively over her shoulder. "We go my room now, Mummy?" Aurelian asked hopefully. "No, Aurelian. I told you that we're not here to play today. And you know this isn't our home anymore." "We're here to have dinner and meet someone new," Hermione replied in a whisper. "Miss Hermione Granger and a young, Aurelian have arrived," Perny announced as they entered the drawing room. Hermione looked around the room uncomfortably until her eyes met Draco's. "Thank you, Perny. Would you please go tell Mother that our guests have arrived?" Draco requested. "Yes, sir." Perny took one last curious look at Aurelian and disappeared. "Daddy!" Aurelian cried excitedly. Draco knelt onto one knee and allowed Aurelian to hug him properly for the first time. It wasn't until his arms were around Aurelian's small body that he realized it. It felt a bit strange, but he enjoyed the closeness. A lopsided smile appeared on his face when he caught the scent of Aurelian's hair. It smelled like coconut. He assumed it was his shampoo, but he couldn't help but wonder if perhaps the child had just gotten into something in the kitchen again. "Miss you, Daddy." "I missed you, too. I'm glad you could come here for dinner tonight," said Draco. "Mommy says no playing," he pouted. "Yeah, no playing tonight, but it will still be nice. Are you ready to see your grandmother?" Draco asked. "Grandmom Helen here?" "No, not Grandmom Helen. Grandmom Helen is your mommy's mother. Tonight you will meet my mother, your grandmother Narcissa," Draco explained. "Grandma Sissa?" Aurelian asked. "I think it would be best if you just called her grandmother," Draco told him. Draco stood up and looked sadly at Hermione. It was obvious that she was uncomfortable. It was then that he realized that they were standing in the exact spot where she had been tortured by his aunt a few years before. He kicked himself for not thinking of it. "I'm sorry," he told her. "It's okay," she said. "I'm just nervous. I thought your mother would be here waiting with you." He was a little surprised that she seemed more concerned about his mother than the room. He admired her courage on both parts. "I thought it would be more comfortable if I got to talk to you first." Draco stepped toward her and ran his fingers through her hair. She closed her eyes as she accepted his comforting touch. Draco Malfoy's comforting touch. She couldn't stop the smile that tugged at the corners of her mouth as she thought it. She was falling for the amazing person she was discovering he was, but it was still funny to her to think what her younger self would say to this idea. "Don't be nervous," Draco urged. "I already told you that her opinion does not affect my own. She only wants to meet Aurelian anyway. Just try to relax." Hermione just nodded. It was a lot easier said than done. Draco bent forward and placed a delicate kiss on her lips. "You'll be fine." Hermione nodded again, and Draco took a step back to look at her. "You look quite beautiful tonight," he commented as he looked over Hermione's cream-colored dress robes. When it came to dressing up, Hermione usually wore a nice muggle dress, but for occasions where she would be in the presence of wizard families or co-workers, she stuck to the traditional dress robes. "Thank you," she said bashfully. "Mother," Draco greeted as Narcissa Malfoy appeared in the entrance of the drawing room. "I would like to introduce Miss Hermione Granger. Hermione, this is my mother, Narcissa Malfoy." Narcissa nodded in acknowledgement, and Hermione returned the gesture. She felt that they should have said something, but she knew it would be a lie to say it was a pleasure. "And this," said Draco, guiding Aurelian to the forefront, "is Aurelian." "Hello. You grandmother?" Aurelian asked. "Yes, I suppose I am," Narcissa answered, curiously surveying the child. "I like your robes. They're pretty blue," Aurelian said, lightly touching the flowing, pale ice-blue robes. "You like blue?" she asked conversationally. "Yes, my favorite, like Daddy. Like tornadoes," he answered. His eyes were wide, bright and innocent. "You have very lovely blue robes, too, I see," she said. "Mine is darker," he said, looking down at his robes. "And little. You is big." "Yes, it does appear I'm a bit tall for you, doesn't it?" she said. "Yeah, your chin is too high to see your eyes," Aurelian told her. Hermione and Draco exchanged looks, wondering how his mother would respond. To both of their surprise, she gracefully sank onto her knees. "Is that better?" she asked. "Yes, I see grandmother's eyes," Aurelian said. Narcissa had to quickly close one of her eyes as the toddler gently prodded her closed lid in demonstration. "Your eyes pretty blue, too." "And your eyes are gray like my Draco's," she said, studying the boy's face curiously. "Master Draco," Perny addressed as she entered the room, "dinner is ready to be served in the dining room when Master is ready." "Yes, we'll take it now, please," said Draco. Narcissa only needed to glance at her son, and Draco walked over to her and offered his arm to help his mother up. Narcissa glanced at Hermione and walked past her out of the room. Hermione looked at Draco uncertainly. Draco rubbed her shoulder in encouragement, and Hermione followed Narcissa from the room with Aurelian catching up to hold Hermione's hand. Hermione kept a comfortable, yet still polite distance from Narcissa as they entered the exquisitely decorated, formal dining room. At the center of the room was a triangular table. It was rather small for the room, with only 4 chairs and place settings, but was still almost twice the size of Hermione's table. It was the perfect size for their group, and Hermione assumed that the size of it was changed regularly for the number of diners. She also noticed that one of the chairs, though it matched the others, was higher than the rest, adjusted just for Aurelian. She escorted Aurelian to his seat and helped him up. Then, when she looked up, she noticed that Draco was holding out her chair for her. She blushed, and she allowed him to push her chair in for her and whispered a quiet, "Thank you." Hermione looked up and saw that she and Narcissa were at the ends of the table. Though they were the furthest apart, they also sat eye to eye. Narcissa, as always, held herself tall with pride. Though Draco was officially the head of the home, Narcissa still had the most powerful presence. Narcissa moved, and Draco and Hermione followed her lead. Narcissa unfolded her napkins and daintily placed it on her lap. Hermione and Draco did the same, and then Hermione helped Aurelian smooth his over his lap. "When Master Draco is ready, Perny has the nettle wine that Master requested," Perny announced. "Thank you, Perny, and the blackberry soda for the young sir. Yes, sir." Perny smiled proudly. Draco nodded. Perny snapped her fingers, and the glasses appeared at each place. With another snap, 4 bowls of soup appeared. "Look, Mummy," said Aurelian. "I gets fizzy soda to match your drink, but it's in a fancy cup." Aurelian pouted at it. "I want my orange cup. Perny, get my orange cup with the handle?" he asked, looking at the house elf in the corner. Perny let out a small squeak and disappeared with a crack. She appeared at Aurelian's side only a few seconds later with a small, orange plastic cup with a handle in her hands. "Ee, ee," she squeaked nervously. Her tiny body trembled, and she looked both confused and frightened. "Perny doesn't understand, Master," she said to Draco. "Perny is having to listen to young sir. Young sir is Perny's master. Perny is not understanding, sir. Perny—" "Calm down, Perny," Draco said placatingly. His eyebrows had risen with intrigue, but now he simply looked amused with a tiny lopsided smile. The house elf looked panicked. "Aurelian is my son." Perny's eyes widened. "Master Draco's son? Master Draco is still Perny's master? Master Draco is having a son? Sir! Master Draco, sir! Perny was not knowing you have a son. Young master, Perny was not knowing you are Perny's young master. Young master!" Perny finished with a curtsy so deep that the top of her nose might have touched the ground if she had bowed any further. "Perny funny, Mommy!" Aurelian laughed behind his hand. Hermione, appearing uncomfortable, looked at Draco, hoping he would stop things, but she said nothing. "I'm sorry, Perny," Draco apologized. "I should have informed you of it earlier." "No, no, Master. Perny is sorry. Perny is still confused, though, sir. Young Master knows and recognizes Perny, but Perny is not having met young Master. Perny does not understand." It's rather confusing, Perny, but now is not the time. I shall explain it to you later, Draco told her. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. But Perny is wanting to ask one more thing, sir. When Draco said nothing to stop her, Perny continued uncertainly. Perny knows that Miss Granger is young Master's mother. Perny knows that Master Draco is the father of young Master. Is Miss Granger being Perny's mistress? Perny looked so confused, frightened, and uncertain that it was heartbreaking. Draco looked at Hermione with a curious and calculating gaze, considering the matter in all its complexity. I don't know, he said to no one in particular. Give her an order, he casually suggested to Hermione. Hermione looked at the house elf, then Draco, and back at the house elf. No, thank you, she said quietly. Come now, Miss Granger, it is only an experiment, Narcissa urged. Hermione had not forgotten that the woman was in the room, not for a moment, but had purposely been trying not to notice any of the woman's reactions. This, however, she most certainly couldn't ignore. Hermione looked at the polished, aristocratic woman across from her, and then to Draco. She felt the pressure and didn't feel comfortable with the situation at all. She had never given a house elf an order and never wanted to. No, thank you, she repeated. She watched as Narcissa's shoulders straightened and she looked down at Hermione with a lofty, scrutinizing gaze. Hermione looked at Draco instead, who looked a little worried by her discomfort as well as her firm yet polite refusal. It's okay, he said quietly. Perny uncertainly stepped back into the shadows. So, Miss Granger, Narcissa said. She delicately sipped her soup and placed her spoon beside her bowl. I don't remember reading anything about you in the paper this past year. What is it that you've been up to? Hermione tried hard to keep her emotions covered. She did not want Mrs. Malfoy to see how uncomfortable she was. She looked at the woman uncertainly and had a feeling that her refined manner and dignified air was a natural behavior for her, at least in most company. But Hermione also had a feeling by the way the woman looked at her and spoke to her that she was being looked down upon, or even that, behind the mask, the woman was laughing at her. Not much, really. I've been working in magical law enforcement in evidence evaluation, and I also do some background research for both the law enforcement squad and the Auras department, Hermione stated. Sounds like an important position. Is that how you came to be part of this case? Narcissa asked. Well, no, not really. It's more because of my relationship with Aurelian. Of course, but I'm curious, just how did you discover that Aurelian is your son? Narcissa inquired. You didn't tell her? Hermione said in confusion as she looked at Draco. Draco shook his head. Oh, well, Hermione started uncertainly. She was becoming a bit flustered under Narcissa's mask of casual and innocent curiosity, but held her kind and cordial demeanor despite it. She scolded herself with a reminder that she really didn't know what Mrs. Malfoy was thinking at all. Perhaps she was just trying to make casual conversation. My future self sent Aurelian back to our time, to the Burrow, the home of the Weasleys, presumably so that we could learn who he was. As soon as he saw me, he called me Mummy. It didn't take much to see that he was right. Hermione looked at Aurelian, who smiled at her before returning to his soup. It was obvious that the conversation was going right over his head. I see. How then did you learn that Draco was the boy's father? Narcissa continued. In much the same way, actually. Harry and I had taken Aurelian to the ministry to ask him some questions. When he saw Draco, he called him Daddy. And you simply accepted that? Narcissa pressed. No, Hermione said uncertainly. It was the way the woman had asked it that made her unsure of what exactly was being asked. We could not just take his word on it. We discovered it was the truth as we asked Aurelian questions. We only knew for certain from the DNA test that the memories we viewed. Oh, yes, the memories, Narcissa replied. She did not expand upon the thought, leaving Hermione to wonder just what she meant. Miss Perny may bring the salad now, sir? Perny quietly asked Draco. Yes, please, Perny, Draco answered. I don't want salad, Aurelian whined. I want fruit. Perny, bring me cup of... No, Hermione interrupted firmly, pulling all the attention back to herself. She lowered her voice to speak quietly to Aurelian, but in the silent room, Draco and Narcissa had no problems overhearing. It is rude to ask for something else. Perny has prepared salad for us, and we will be grateful. Perny looked uncertainly at Draco. Draco nodded to her. Perny disappeared with a crack, and the soup bowls vanished with her. But I don't want salad, Aurelian pouted. Then you only need to take 2 bites to be polite and wait for the next course, Hermione whispered. The salads appeared before the 4 diners, and Aurelian crossed his arms and pouted moodily at his plate. Aurelian, Hermione admonished, her eyebrows raised in a challenge. Aurelian huffed and gave another sour pout, but picked up his fork. "Thank you." "Good man," Draco told Aurelian quietly. "You mind your manners and you mind your mother, and we'll have some strawberry sorbet for dessert." "I like strawberries," Aurelian said, cheering up quickly. "I know. That's why I asked Perny to prepare it," Draco told him. Aurelian quickly took a bite of his salad. Hermione tried hard not to look at Narcissa's reaction, but could not help but glance up at her. She was, as always, quite unreadable. "So, Miss Granger," Narcissa started again, "Draco tells me that you've taken an interest in him." "What?" Hermione said in surprise. "Mother!" Draco whispered in admonishment. It was obvious by Draco's response that that was not the way he had put it when speaking to her. "Is this not true?" she asked innocently. No, it is," Hermione said uncomfortably. "He also told me that you have asked him to dinner at your home, not once, but twice," she said conversationally. "Yes," Hermione answered, watching the woman suspiciously. "I can't help but wonder if this was connected to work or if it was solely because of your romantic interest in him," Narcissa stated. She set down her fork and pushed her salad plate away. As soon as she did, the salad plates vanished and were replaced with the main course. "Actually, the first time I invited him over, it was because of his interest in seeing Aurelian," Hermione declared. "The second time was because, as you put it, I had taken an interest in him and wanted to get to know him better." "Because of what you saw in the memories." Again, her voice sounded like she was innocently curious, but it felt accusatory. "Because I began seeing a side of him that I had never seen before," Hermione corrected, feeling flustered and defensive. Still, she remained calm and composed. "Miss Granger, what are your intentions with my son?" Narcissa asked, dropping all amicable pretenses. "Intentions?" Hermione looked rather disconcerted, completely taken aback by the question. "Mother!" Draco hissed his disapproval. Narcissa waved a dismissive hand in Draco's direction and did not take her eyes off of Hermione. "Yes, intentions. Because from what I can see, you had absolutely no interest in my son until you discovered that he was the father of your child." I can't say that I have intentions. I simply enjoy his company," Hermione claimed. "In what way?" Narcissa pressed. "Mother!" Draco said firmly still. "If you don't stop this, I will put an end to this dinner right now." Narcissa waved him off again and waited patiently for Hermione's reply. Hermione was having a difficult time keeping her composure. She felt a small, sour pucker on her lips and tried to force it away. "It's true that I hadn't had an interest in him prior to this. Our history is not a very friendly one, but we have both grown since then. Through this investigation, and the time we have seen each other apart from the investigation, I have discovered that Draco is quite an incredible person. I do not have expectations regarding my relationship with him, nor his relationship with Aurelian. I simply enjoy spending time with him. My only intention is to get to know him better." "I see," Narcissa replied stiffly, still looking down on Hermione imperiously. "I like Daddy too," Aurelian announced. He was extremely lost on the conversation, but he understood that they were talking about liking Draco. "I like him play with me." "So I hear," Narcissa replied, a small smile reappearing. "I hear that he brought you a lot of nice toys." "Yes, he bought me Quidditch people, a broom, and trolls, and lots of stuff," Aurelian beamed. "I like playing with Daddy, but Mummy says no playing tonight." Hermione stared down at her plate with her jaw tight as she prodded her potatoes. Despite hardly touching her salad and only taking one bite of her beef, she was not very hungry. She knew it would be an uncomfortable dinner experience, but she certainly had not expected it to go like this. She hadn't expected Narcissa to say much of anything to her. She poked her fork into a small piece of potato and took a bite. Even though she was not hungry, she could not just let her food sit there. It wasn't for manners, but more that Perny must have put a lot of work into preparing the meal. "I likes playing with Daddy, but I miss playing in my room. I miss my Quidditch rug and my stars on the ceiling." "It sounds like a very lovely room," Narcissa told him. "You not see it? I show you," Aurelian said excitedly. "It's up the stairs and down the hall." "Your room is here?" Narcissa asked, her eyebrows raised. "No, it's up the stairs and down the hall," Aurelian told her, pointing as he spoke. "Aurelian," Hermione spoke gently, though she was feeling quite exasperated. "Your room isn't here anymore, remember?" "Yeah, that's what she said," Aurelian told Narcissa, as if demonstrating that this was a regular thing. He sighed and pouted. "Mummy say we live in her little home now, but I miss my stars and my Daddy." "Understandably," Narcissa replied. Perny, we'll take dessert now, Draco said, his eyes narrowed at his mother. She glanced at her son, but showed no hint of emotion. She looked neither cross nor apologetic. Perny, on the other hand, looked quite distraught. Narcissa had ended the salad course when they had hardly touched it, and Draco ended the main course after only 2 minutes. Yay! Strawberry ice cream! Aurelian shouted excitedly. Thank you, Perny! Yes, young master. Perny is glad young master is pleased, but is hoping it is okay. Perny has prepared sorbet, not ice cream. Is it to your liking, young master? Perny asked tremulously. Is the yummiest, Perny, Aurelian said enthusiastically. Perny is the bestest cooker. Perny beamed at this, her eyes sparkling. The next few minutes passed in silence. Hermione stared at her bowl of sorbet and ate quietly, suppressing the urge to glance at any of the other diners. Draco, on the other hand, barely looked at his bowl as he ate. He looked at Hermione with concern, and then kept his eyes sternly on his mother. Narcissa Malfoy watched the young boy next to her delightedly devour his sorbet with great zeal, and pointedly ignored her son's meaningful stare. Finished? Narcissa asked, as Aurelian licked the last of his spoon. Aurelian nodded. Wonderful. She then stood and moved away from the table, signaling the end of the meal. Thank you, Perny, Aurelian said as he hopped off the chair and went to follow his grandmother. Hermione sighed and stood up, leaving her dessert unfinished. Thank you, Perny, she said softly. She left the room with Draco right behind her. I believe this ends our evening, Narcissa announced as she stopped in the large entrance hall. It was a pleasure meeting you, Aurelian. Thank you for joining me this evening. I like you too, Aurelian answered. Narcissa smiled back at him. I think I shall be retiring for the evening, Draco. Do you think you could see our guests out? Narcissa asked. Yes, mother. Good night, he answered, looking rather stiff and annoyed. Narcissa nodded and turned toward the staircase at the back of the large hall. Oh, wait, Miss Granger, she added as an afterthought. She turned around and addressed Hermione from a few meters away. Mr. Potter seemed to think that you were of high enough skill to properly set up property wards around our home, and also mentioned that you would be willing to be of service. I believe I shall accept that offer. Before Hermione could respond, she turned her attention to Draco. I believe you can oversee her work, Draco? Yes, mother, Draco said flatly. Narcissa nodded and slowly ascended the staircase. Hermione gasped with surprise when her mobile phone began to ring in her purse. Mrs. Malfoy stopped on the stairs and looked down at Hermione curiously. Hermione ignored the sound of her phone completely and stared back at the woman. Narcissa's chin rose a little higher at Hermione's stoic expression, then turned and resumed her ascent. Draco watched along with Hermione until his mother was out of sight. He then turned a worried look at Hermione. Her jaw was set firmly, and there was a spark in her eye. He could see that she was near the edge, but wasn't sure if she was ready to lash out or cry. Are you all right? He asked softly. No, she answered. Her face screwed up, and he knew that she was close to tears. This was a disaster. Draco took a step closer to her and put his hand consolingly on her upper arm. Don't touch me, she said, pulling away from him a little. It wasn't said harshly or angrily. She was overwhelmed, flustered, and uncertain. She wasn't sure what she wanted or needed just then, but she didn't want to be touched. Draco took his hand away, looking hurt and helpless. That look turned to determination. He took another step closer and gently cupped her cheek. Hermione's face screwed up tighter, but she did not reject his touch. His fingers slid up into her hair, and he tucked a few loose curls behind her ears. What was that? She demanded in frustration, her eyes going to the place she last saw Narcissa. I mean, I knew she wouldn't like me, but I certainly didn't expect that. Not only did she make me feel humiliated and worthless, she made me feel pretentious, and like a bad mother on top of that. I knew she wouldn't like me, but, oh! Hey, he said in a soothing voice, running his fingers through her hair again. First, no one ever questioned your skills as a mother. You're amazing with Aurelian. Even my mother could find no fault in you there. Hermione stared into his eyes, and her insides twisted. She felt even closer to tears. And my mother was terrible. There have been very few times in my life that I have ever seen her so rude, he continued. But you handled her well. She's quite impressed with you. What? Hermione demanded angrily, taking a step back from him. Impressed? You can't be serious. I am. Impressed? Were you in there? Hermione said heatedly, gesturing wildly in the direction of the dining hall. I was, Draco said with a small, endearing smirk, taking a step toward her again. And despite your usual admirable perspicacity, I think that I saw a bit more than you did in there. And somehow, with all that happened in there, you believe she likes me, she said sardonically. No, I didn't say that she likes you. She doesn't, Draco said with obvious disappointment. I said she was impressed by you. Hermione's eyes narrowed at him and she crossed her arms. She was curious and a bit hopeful at the idea. She didn't understand it. She didn't want to hope. And she didn't even want to listen to Draco at that moment. But her curiosity and insecurities won out over her indignant pride. And why do you believe that? My mother prides herself on being unreadable. It is a trait that she and my father have tried hard to instill in me. It is only because I have known her my entire life that I am able to follow her thoughts and say with confidence that you impressed her, Draco explained. And it started with your parenting skills. You were kind, yet firm, when you spoke to Aurelian and corrected his manners. It was rather frightening how much you looked like my mother when speaking to him. It was exactly the way she admonished me when I was young, and I hope that you can accept that as a great compliment from us both. Hermione wasn't sure how she felt about that statement. It was because of that she decided to test you. I repeat that she was horribly rude, and I am extremely upset with her right now because of it. But that is what all of that was. It was a test. She meant to be rude and upset you. You conducted yourself with pride and honesty. You did not flinch, deflect, or reciprocate my mother's provocation. Draco smiled softly and with great admiration as he combed his fingers through her hair again. You were incredible, so much so that even Mother could not help but be impressed. I don't know if I can believe that, Hermione admitted quietly. I guess I can understand that, Draco replied, delicately stroking her cheek. It can't be easy to simply accept my assessment when it so greatly contradicts your own. But I tell you again, her opinion of you means nothing to me. Be angry with her for her rudeness, but I don't want you to let it bother you beyond that. Hermione closed her eyes and allowed his touch to soothe her, but as comforting as it wasn't as simple to let go of her frustration as he made it seem. But, as I see that it does bother you, he continued, I ask you to consider just one more thing. Hermione opened her eyes and stared into his. She looked so vulnerable. My mother just asked you to protect us, Draco stated. Hermione's eyes widened in surprise. I know that she didn't come straight out with it like that, but, in essence, that's what she did. My mother trusts very few people. I have very rarely seen her accept help from others. She just placed a lot of trust in you. Don't take that lightly. She didn't. Hermione just stared at him. She hadn't considered it like that. She was skilled in charms. Property wards were one of her specialties. She used them quite frequently, and her friends and co-workers had complete confidence in her abilities. It was nothing to her. She realized, though, after Draco had brought it to her attention, that it must have been difficult for someone like Narcissa to put so much blind faith in her. Think no more on it now, though, Draco urged. Hermione nodded slowly. You're right. Now is time for business, she said, concentrating on the task in front of her. Harry and I have discussed it between ourselves, and we think it would be best to use full protection wards over your property, meaning every property ward that I know. Well, all that pertain to this situation. That's fine. Thank you, Draco answered. Don't answer so quickly, Hermione warned. You have to consider it first. That means that I would put up a ward that would only allow certain people that I would specify to enter the property. You wouldn't be able to invite guests over without me coming to adjust the charm. I would, of course, come to adjust it if you ask. It's not a problem for me, but it could be an inconvenience to you and your mother. That's fine, Draco repeated. We rarely have guests anymore. If my mother wishes the company of her friends, I'm sure that, considering the new circumstances, she would feel more comfortable meeting them elsewhere anyway. Hermione nodded. I would appreciate it if you would allow Blaze and Pansy for me, he requested. Of course, Hermione answered. That's all? That's all. Well, except for you and Aurelian. And Potter. Hermione gave a lopsided smile when he grudgingly added Harry to his list. Those were a given. Another spell to consider before agreeing is, well, I don't know what to call it. It allows me to see all the comings and goings of anyone within the boundaries. It would list the names and times of entering and exiting the perimeter. I would like to place it at 150 meters beyond your immediate property limits. That's fine, but I've never heard of a spell before, he said, looking at her curiously. That's because it's my own design. Well, I hate to say it like that. I really just stole elements from the Marauders map, a time recording spell, and a basic boundary spell. It comes in handy, she said lamely. Draco smirked and shook his head. Is that all? He said jokingly. It sounds astoundingly brilliant to me. Hermione blushed. Well, the other spells are rather basic and shouldn't impede your daily life at all. I can get started on it right now if you can just keep an eye on Aurelian for me. She looked down where Aurelian had been snooping just a moment before and felt her stomach drop when she didn't see him. Draco realized it as well, and they both started looking frantically around the obviously empty entrance hall. Merlin, can you check his old room? Yeah, I'll check there. Do you want to check the... Master Draco? Perny timidly spoke from the entrance to the dining hall. Perny is sorry to interrupt, sir, she continued, twisting her fingers nervously. But young Master Aurelian is in Perny's quarters, sir. Oh, no, Draco groaned. Perny is sorry, sir, she squeaked. Perny is not knowing what to do, sir. Perny looked frantic and extremely distressed. Draco knew that look, and she was ready to punish herself. No, Perny, he said fiercely. You've done nothing wrong. I apologize for my son entering your quarters. I understand that it is your private space. Would you prefer that I retrieve him, or would you prefer to bring him here to me? Perny squealed. She didn't know what to do. Her master asked her opinion, and she didn't know what to say. But Perny does not wish to overstep by touching young sir. Sir, but Your space is your own, Perny. I respect that. Would you please bring Aurelian here to me? Draco asked. Yes, sir. Perny disappeared with a crack. It was obvious to Draco that Perny had felt really uncomfortable about him entering her space, but she was also terribly worried about moving her young master without a direct order. Sorry, Draco told Hermione. She's not used to children. No, I just feel bad for her. We should have been watching him. He's just so fast. Crack! Mummy! Daddy! Aurelian smiled brightly. I found Perny's home. That home is her private area, Draco scolded. You are not to go there. I think you know that, too. Aurelian pouted with guilt. I think you should apologize to Perny, Hermione told him. No, please, Perny said quickly. Perny is sorry. Young master need not to be sorry. My sorry, Perny, Aurelian told her. Perny squeaked uncertainly. Perny is... she whimpered, not knowing what to say. Perny, perhaps now would be a good time to clean your quarters and make sure they are in order, Draco suggested. Yes, sir. Perny smiled and disappeared. Draco looked uncertainly at Hermione. He knew she didn't like him giving orders to his house elf. She looked at him with the same uncertainty. So I'll get started on those spells then, she said. How many are there? He asked. In total, 6, she answered. It's a large property, even larger when you add an extra 150 meters on all sides for that one spell. Would you like to borrow a broom? He offered. Hermione bit her lip, and as she considered the offer, she wasn't really looking forward to walking around the property so many times, but she really didn't care for flying either. Draco could see the conflict beside her. She sighed. Okay, I think I'll accept that offer. Draco summoned his broom and handed it to her. Take your time, all right? Aurelian and I will be fine. Hermione nodded and walked out the front door with Draco's old Nimbus 2001 in her hand. Once started, Hermione was glad that she had taken up Draco's offer to use his broom, because even with its aid, it took her over 30 minutes to set up all the protective wards. The property was larger than she had imagined. When she returned to the house, her hair was rather tousled, and she was quite happy to have her feet back on the ground. How did it go? Draco asked as she handed him back his broom. It's all finished, she reported. You now have one of the securest homes in Britain. Thank you, he said sincerely. You don't need to thank me. I was just going to do it with or without your permission, she said coyly. He smirked. Why? Are you worried about me? Hermione avoided her eyes bashfully, and a light blush rose in her cheeks. Draco had said it jokingly, knowing that she was concerned about his safety. But it wasn't until he said it aloud that he realized how true it was. She was sincerely concerned about him. A light feeling rose in his chest at the thought, and he smiled fondly at her flushed cheeks. His eyes traveled to her wind-swept hair, and his smile grew. Hermione gasped when she realized what he was smiling about and immediately started brushing it down with her fingers. Don't. I like it, he said seriously, combing his fingers through her hair. I don't think I've ever seen you on a broom. It's not a common occurrence, she assured him. We'll see about that, he smirked. Oh, I forgot. Your mobile thing was, singing while you were outside. What? Hermione asked, starting to worry. Once she had gone outside, she remembered that she had missed a call and should have returned it before setting the wards, but she didn't think it would hurt to wait until she finished. 2 calls so close together was concerning. Only 3 people had ever called her phone: Ron, Ginny, and her mother. If someone called twice, then it could be serious. Yeah, or just 10 minutes or so after you went outside, Draco said, also worried because of the look on Hermione's face. What wrong, Mummy? Aurelian asked. Nothing. I don't know, Hermione said as she dug through her purse. She pulled out her mobile and saw 2 missed calls. It's Ron. I'm sorry, but do you mind if I call him now? No, go ahead, Draco answered. The light feeling in his stomach suddenly dropped like a lead weight. Hermione's foot tapped impatiently as her phone dialed. Hermione? Ron's voice came through. Ron, what's wrong? Hermione asked immediately. Where have you been? I was just about to call you again, Ron told her. I'm at Malfoy Manor, she answered. Oh, he replied flatly. I was putting up property wards when you called, she continued without pause. Oh, he said again, his tone lighter and much more accepting. So what happened? What's wrong? Hermione asked, having no patience for his opinions regarding Draco. What? He asked. Nothing's wrong. Is it? What? What are you calling about then? Asked Hermione. I was looking for Harry. Is he there with you? No, why? What's wrong? She repeated. Nothing's wrong. Why do you keep asking that? Because you called me twice in 30 minutes and were ready to call again. I assumed it was urgent, sounding irritated. Well, I just called back because you didn't answer, he said defensively. Because I'm busy. I can't always call back right away, she replied, her voice rising. I thought you must have just been ignoring it, he reasoned. So you decided to pester me until I answered? Ron, if I don't answer you, just wait for me to call you back. Don't keep calling unless it's an emergency. Now, what is it that's so important that you need to talk to Harry about that you're pestering me to find him? I just wanted to see if he had the chance to meet with the goblins at Gringotts today, Ron answered nervously, hoping not to further provoke Hermione's ire. Was he supposed to? Hermione asked, her frustration turning to curiosity. He mentioned that he might. He received an owl from Wayne today. It said that the court summons had been sent to Harry's goblin, Krubat, or whatever, and that the witch and the goblins peeved at. He was hoping the goblins would just get right back to him, Ron explained. I'm curious now as well, but I haven't seen him all afternoon. I thought he wanted to see Ginny tonight, Hermione told him. Well, he's not with her because she's here at the Burrow with me. He's not at home either. I guess it's not that big of a deal. I can just talk to him tomorrow, Ron decided. Sorry for bothering you, though. Really. It's okay, Hermione sighed. I'll talk to you— Wait, Ron interrupted. You're with Malfoy, aren't you? Yes, she said, wondering why that piece of information would be so important to him. Can you give him a message for me? Ron asked rather irritably. Yeah, she repeated hesitantly. Tell him that I'm not a messenger, especially not his, Ron grumbled. Hermione could picture the disgruntled sneer on his freckled face. Working on this investigation does not mean that he works for the law enforcement department. I don't want any more goons he calls friends showing up here and poking around for him. Someone came to the office. Your office? He went to the Auror's office first, tossing Malfoy and Harry's names around. They sent him to me, thinking I might know where Malfoy was. I told him I'm not the bloody ferret's keeper, and I don't take messages, Ron stated. And you can tell that to Malfoy, too. But who was it? Who came looking for him? Hermione asked, sounding a bit worried. Who came looking for whom? Draco interrupted. Hermione was startled when she remembered that Draco was standing right behind her. She silently gestured for him to give her a minute. Huh? Oh, Zabini, Ron answered. Zabini? Blaise Zabini? Hermione asked. What? Blaise what? Draco worried. Hermione gestured to him again. Yeah, Ron answered. He sounded a bit annoyed, but Hermione was not sharing his disgust. But what did he say? She pressed. Just that he was looking for Malfoy, Ron stated. He said it was important. Then why didn't you tell me that first? Hermione demanded. Slytherins are selfish. They think everything about themselves is important, Ron declared. Ugh, she sighed. I know you don't like playing messenger, but Draco's part of our case. If someone is looking for him there, then it's important, okay? Is Zabini part of this somehow? Ron asked. Sort of. I can't explain it. I have to go, Hermione told him. All right. I'm sorry. It's fine. I'll see you tomorrow, Hermione sighed and folded her phone shut. What's wrong? What happened? What about Zabini? Is he okay? Draco demanded. Slow down, she said, placing a soothing hand on Draco's shoulder. Draco did not calm. I guess Blaise came looking for you at the ministry today. He went to the Auror's office looking for you, and they sent him to Ron, Hermione told him. And what did he say? What did he want? Did he say? Draco pressed. Just that he was looking for you. I guess he said it was important, Hermione said, feeling rather miserable, even though she had no control over the passing of the message before then. It has to be, Draco said, looking rather panicked. He would never come looking for me there unless it was really important. I... He was frantically pacing the entrance hall, running his fingers through his hair. Hermione felt more anxious just watching him. Even Aurelian looked concerned by Draco's distress. I have to go see him. I'm sorry, Hermione, but I have to go. I don't know what... Calm down, Hermione urged, placing her hands on his shoulders. I'm sure it's all right. If it was really serious, he would have either told someone at the law enforcement office, or he would have been banging down your front door during dinner. Draco nodded. She was right. Do you want me to come with you? Hermione asked tentatively. Draco looked at her as he considered it. With his eyes locked on hers, he nodded. Then give me just 5 minutes, okay? 10 minutes tops, she said, her voice still soothing. His eyes couldn't leave hers. He was sincerely worried, and her eyes were a steady calm. I'll take Aurelian to the burrow now, so someone can watch him, and I'll be right back. Draco suddenly started feeling a little foolish when he thought that he needed someone to watch Aurelian if she came with him. It might not be that important. No, Hermione, you don't have to. Really, I want to come. I'm as certain as you are that it's important. The Weasleys don't mind in the least, and Aurelian will be excited to visit them, Hermione assured him. My see Aunt Molly and Aunt Ginny? Aurelian asked. Yes, love. Yay! Hermione scooped Aurelian up in her arms without taking her eyes off of Draco. 5 minutes, she said firmly. Meet me at the front gate of the manor. We can apparate from there. Draco couldn't answer, so he just nodded. It took a lot of effort for Hermione to pry her eyes from him. He was scared, genuinely frightened, and she didn't want to leave him like that. She decided then to do it quickly. She took a pinch of flue powder and tossed it into the large fireplace near the front doors. She glanced at Draco once more before stepping into the flames with Aurelian and announcing her destination. The burrow,